So hello everyone, and welcome to Startup Canada's first Investment Readiness Program webinar in what will be an ongoing series. Today's session is entitled Social Entrepreneurship 101 and Canada's Investment Readiness Program. So my name is Rachel Dragas. Hello, I am the Program Manager of Social Impact here at Startup Canada. So before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the land on which I reside today. The City of Toronto acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of all Indigenous peoples. So we would encourage you to also take a moment before we begin to acknowledge and reflect on the traditional territory that you are residing on today. So just a bit of background on Startup Canada. We are a national nonprofit and a gateway to Canada's entrepreneurial ecosystem. We are here to connect entrepreneurs with the support, community, and tools that they need to build successful businesses all across Canada. So we help support social entrepreneurs across the country and are also an ecosystem builder and member of the Investment Readiness Program's partnership team. So before we begin, just a few housekeeping items. So today's session will be recorded and we will be adding this to Startup Canada's YouTube channel afterwards as a resource for you. We are also looking to have a French interpreter available for the webinar today, as well as live transcription. Lucy Lessard should be joining us momentarily, and you will be able to select the corresponding channel at the bottom of your screen to access French interpretation. So during the session, we do ask that you please keep your cameras off and microphones muted. However, we do welcome nonverbal feedback and feel free to use the reactions buttons in your menu bar at the bottom of your screen. And we also welcome you to connect with each other, and you can do this in the chat. So each speaker today will have around 15 minutes for their presentations, and we will hold a question and answer period during the last 10 to 15 minutes of the session. So if you do have any questions for our speakers throughout the presentations, we do encourage you to place them in the chat and we will flag them to our moderator and do our best to have them answered live. So to help guide today's conversation, I would like to welcome our moderator, Susanna Redekop. Susanna is the Engagement Manager at the Canadian Community Economic Development Network, or CEDNET. And as part of the Investment Readiness Program team, Susanna builds and maintains relationships and communications between the various partner organizations that are involved in delivering and supporting the Investment Readiness Program to ultimately help support a stronger ecosystem for social purpose organizations across Canada. So with that, I would like to invite Susanna to take the floor to introduce the webinar as well as our speakers. Welcome, Susanna.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Thanks so much for that wonderful introduction. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Susanna Redekop. I'm going to be your guide and moderator for today. As Rachel mentioned, I'm the engagement manager for the IRP at CEDNET. CEDNET is a convener, connector, facilitator, advocate, and partner, bringing together our member network of organizations, networks, and individuals around community economic development and innovative entrepreneurial strategies that challenge the status quo and build economic alternatives. Supporting social purpose organizations and enabling their success is key to Canada's economic, social, cultural, and environmental success today and in the future. Social entrepreneurs and their social enterprises are focused on building a more sustainable, resilient future through innovative work aimed at collaborative systems change. However, impact-driven entrepreneurs often encounter some unique challenges when it comes to brainstorming innovative ideas and solutions, building capacity, or accessing financial support, as we all know. Mindful of the challenges that lie ahead for social entrepreneurs and social enterprises, we brought together a group of experts and advisors in this field. Today's conversation is all focused on equipping you with some of the foundational knowledge, tools, and resources needed to successfully, confidently navigate your journey to systemic change. We'll talk through the practical steps you can take to access social funding and build a sustainable business. Without further ado, I'm honored to introduce our speakers today in order of presentation. First, we have Wayne Miranda, Policy Analyst, from Employment and Social Development Canada. He's contributing to the advancement of the social innovation and social finance strategy led by the Government of Canada. With roots deep in the impact sector, Wayne also founded and built Growth Mosaic, a best for the world B Corp based in Ghana, advancing the West African impact investment sector. Michelle Bridger, Manager of Strategic Initiatives, Community Foundations of Canada. She comes with a wide range of experiences in economic development, social enterprise, granting, sustainable agriculture, and program design. As a project manager, Michelle is focused on leading the Investment Readiness Program for Community Foundations of Canada, while working alongside many other IRP partners to grow capacity in the social enterprise sector. Sarah Qureshi, founder of Social Venture Circuit, works with changemakers and founders to support their passion for positive impact on people, communities, and the planet. Zara founded Social Venture Circuit in 2020 with the vision to build a community of social enterprises that could grow and learn together. What's more, she's also the community leader for Startup Social Enterprise at Startup Canada. Now let's please welcome our first presenter. We have Wayne Miranda, Policy Analyst at ESDC, Government of Canada. Wayne, over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Susanna. That was a kind introduction, and welcome everybody. I'm very pleased to be here. And just want to do a screen check. Everyone can see my share screen. Perfect, excellent. So as Susanna kindly introduced myself, I'll just say, hi, I'm Wayne Miranda. I'm with Employment and Social Development Canada as a policy analyst, working on this investment readiness program, and pleased to introduce the program today. I'm also joining from Dish with One Spoon territory, similar to Susanna in Toronto. So here we are, noon on a Tuesday. I'm already going to introduce some jargon. So we use the term social purpose organizations as a bit of a catch-all phrase to refer to many different types of corporate legal forms, from registered charities and nonprofit organizations to cooperatives, hybrid organizations, social enterprise, for-profits. At the core of these organizations, there's a social environmental purpose. And these organizations, as we know, many of you know, it's wonderful to see those of you introducing yourselves through the chat. You are at the heart of our communities and our economy. You are providing safety nets from shelters and mental health supports and food banks. You're providing pathways to livelihoods like newcomer settlement services, employment skills training, and so forth, platforms to access jobs. You're contributing to the economic well-being of Canada in terms of creating jobs, especially for people facing barriers to employment. And you're improving quality of life, inspiring us with the arts, keeping us healthy with sports and recreation, and so forth. So we know that helping social purpose organizations and helping social purpose organizations to innovate in particular is both great for Canada and our society today, as well as for future generations. And social finance is a tool that social purpose organizations can use to advance their mission. Social finance refers to repayable investment intending to advance the social, environmental, cultural, or economic impact at the end of the day, in addition to financial returns. And so social finance uses many of the same financial instruments or tools or mechanisms as does traditional finance. So we're talking about loans and common share and preferred stocks and revenue share agreements and so forth. But social finance differs in one key way in that the use of these tools is strictly towards achieving a positive social environmental impact. And social finance can be used for many different purposes, including but not limited to what you see on the screen in these 4 boxes. So you can use it to advance a social enterprise. So social finance can scale up or otherwise launch a new social enterprise that advances a social environmental purpose. Excuse me. You could also use social finance towards social purpose real estate, such as buying a headquarters for a registered charity, or towards co-working space or affordable housing. You can use social finance just towards bridging your cash flow, such as investing in an energy retrofit project that would ultimately help you save on your utility bills. Or you could hire fundraising capacity to generate revenue, unrestricted revenue, for instance. You can also use social finance in something called outcomes finance. So an example here is a social impact bond that connects investors that would provide the upfront funding to an implementing agency that will ultimately deliver impact that is of interest and will be paid for by an outcomes buyer, typically the government. So you can use social finance in so many different ways. Recognizing this, as well as what social innovation has to offer these social purpose organizations, the government has made progress or has launched the social innovation, social finance strategy. So it first came to be in 2018, following the engagement process of a steering committee that was a year-long sector consultation process. It brought together practitioners, experts, and community leaders. And since then, the government has made progress on a number of these different recommendations. There were 12 of them in total. So for instance, Public Services and Procurement Canada has piloted social procurement with Indigenous and Black-led social purpose organizations. The Canada Revenue Authority has established the Advisory Committee on the Charitable Sector to ensure financial sustainability and modern governance to maximize the sector impact. And where I work, Employment and Social Development Canada has led on 3 different foundational elements of the social innovation, social finance strategy of the government. So the Social Finance Fund is a $755 million fund that is targeted to expand social finance marketplace and increase the availability and flexibility of the capital towards social purpose organizations. The Social Innovation Advisory Council is intended to provide the department strategic advice in the implementation of the strategy. And more to the purpose of today's call and webinar, the Investment Readiness Program helps social purpose organizations build the skills and capacities to access the social finance marketplace. And so in the pilot program of 2019-2021, it was a $50 million investment readiness program. 2,665 social purpose organizations applied and engaged in the program over that 2-year period. They requested a total of $161 million of investment readiness support. Unfortunately, the program funding that was available only really reached about 25% of the demand. It's about 680 social purpose organizations. And but the program was quite a success. So over 80% of the participating and funded social purpose organizations did report that they made progress towards becoming at least a bit more investment ready. And the program reached various social purpose organizations, either led by or serving equity deserving groups. And they indicated they serve at least one of those. So following this pilot program, the Investment Readiness Program was renewed. And so this is what the Investment Readiness Program is really aiming to do as a renewed program. It's addressing the continued lack of awareness of social finance. So one of our partners of the program, Imagine Canada, put out a report that indicated 2/3 of registered charities, for instance, may not have even heard of the term social finance. So we're trying to address this lack of awareness of what this tool is and how it might be beneficial to advance the missions of social purpose organizations. It's also looking at building the skills and capacity and ability of organizations to take on repayable investment. And it's specifically trying to reach out and engage organizations that are representing equity deserving groups and address those barriers that they face in accessing finance. So this is what the renewed Investment Readiness Program overall looks like. It's a $50 million 2-year program. And we generally segment into 6 different categories of partners who are delivering the program. So the government is more or less just a funder. We use lots of different organizations, and I'll speak to some of them now. So the key group to really know about is Readiness Support Partners, and you're about to hear from one of them, Community Foundations of Canada, in a minute. And Readiness Support Partners administer the funds to reach social purpose organizations. So if you are a social purpose organization looking to engage in the program, you want to know who the Readiness Support Partners are. And then we have surrounding the Readiness Support Partners various different ecosystem builders, as we refer to them as. So ecosystem builders strengthen the connections, the networks, the expertise. They provide social purpose organizations a variety of different supports and resources and tools to engage in this ecosystem and really sort of drive out or draw on some benefits. So we have ecosystem builders that are investing in inclusive innovation to ensure that equity deserving social purpose organizations of all different types everywhere across Canada, including remote regions, are engaged, are represented in the system, and are welcome in the system. We have ecosystem builders that are strengthening the networks of expertise within the social innovation, social finance ecosystem, including specialized services that are tailored to equity deserving groups. We have other partners that are conducting research and that are disseminating tools and knowledge. We have other partners that are investing in the social purpose organization capacity to participate in social procurement. So social procurement is basically a mechanism to sell goods and services to the government or to corporate buyers. And we also have SEDNet, who we heard from earlier today. Susanna is here representing SEDNet and other partners that are looking to connect the ecosystem, looking to connect partners, looking to help partners wayfind and help social purpose wayfind themselves through this, otherwise complicated system. So if you're looking specifically for the names of these different partners, and this slide deck will be made available after the webinar through Startups support. But I'll just mention a few of the different partners. So Readiness Support Partners, you're going to hear from Community Foundations of Canada, but the other four include Canadian Women's Foundation, if you're a gender equity seeking or a deserving social purpose organization, so women-led or gender diverse-led. Chantier de l'économie sociale, so Chantier for short, in Quebec, for Quebec-based social purpose organizations. We have Foundation for Black Communities, specifically for Black-led social purpose organizations. And we have National Association of Friendship Centers, specifically for urban Indigenous and Northern social purpose organizations. A few other organizations, so Congress of Aboriginal Peoples, we have Native Women's Association of Canada, as well as Raven, Indigenous Impact Foundation, are all working on engaging and doing work with Indigenous-led social purpose organizations. If you happen to be a Black-led social purpose organization, you might want to have Social Economy through Social Inclusion, SETC, or the Afro-Caribbean Business Network in your mind. Northern social purpose organizations could look to CERNOCA, which is a research institution, or Entrepreneurship to engage in. We have Common Good Solutions in Atlantic Canada. We have Imagine Canada looking at charities, Cooperatives and Mutuals Canada looking at co-ops, Bisocial Canada working on social procurement. So this is just a quick overview of what the Renewed Investment Readiness Program is all about. And that's where I'll end it for today, but happy to look at questions in the Q&A period. So I'll pass it back to Susanna. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Wayne, for that great presentation. I really appreciate how you laid the groundwork and the background for the IRP, but also that wider picture of the social innovation, social finance ecosystem. Thanks so much for that. If you have questions for Wayne, please add them in the chat. We'll be able to answer some of them during the Q&A at the end. Any questions that we don't get to can be answered in the chat feature in this conference platform for this session, or you can connect with the speaker one-on-one through private message or meeting. So next, to help you with the application process and to explain what that entails, I'd love to welcome Michelle Bridger, Manager of Strategic Initiatives at Community Foundations of Canada, who currently have an open call for application. So on to you, Michelle. Please take it away. I believe,
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, now you're unmuted.
I'm here, I'm muted, and now I'm not. So sorry, everyone, I've got a lot of screens open, but really happy to be here. Okay, so I'm just gonna share my screen. And everyone can see that?
Excellent, looks great.
Okay, wonderful. So I am going to cover a couple of different things, a little bit about CFC, a little bit about the IRP pilot, so that first iteration of the program, some challenges and opportunities that we saw, some stories from the pilot. Then I'm going to jump in a little bit into the IRP as it is now, our role as a support partner, and then CFC's kind of application intake and how we work for rolling out this program alongside some resources. I'm going to skip a couple of slides because Wayne has covered some really important details. And so I'm just giving a heads up for the interpreter and also for you when you see me skipping through a couple of slides. It's already been covered, no worries. All right, so first, I work with Community Foundations of Canada. Community Foundations of Canada is the national office to a network of over 200 community foundations. So in over 90% of communities in Canada, there is a community foundation. Our purpose is to relentlessly pursue a future where everyone belongs. Myself personally, I am located on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people, known as Ottawa. I have deep colonial roots. As I've learned, I continue to learn more about my personal history. I found out that some of my ancestors arrived in the 1700s. And so I'm still kind of grappling with what my own personal history means and how that relates to Indigenous peoples today and to Canada's history. So I just wanted to start us off with that. But as I said, Community Foundations is a network of partners. And so everyone has their own place. And Community Foundations of Canada really is a network of foundations spread out through the country. They're philanthropic organizations that direct grants, leadership, and investments towards community initiatives. Collectively, community foundations have over 7.5 billion in assets, and they grant over 300 to 400 million a year. As an example, the Vancouver Foundation has over $1 billion in assets, and it grants around $1 million a week. There's also community foundations, many community foundations that have a smaller asset size, and they're volunteer run. And they're really as diverse as our country. So community foundations work locally, but also collectively through national funding programs. So as I said, Wayne has touched on a couple of these pieces. And so the most important piece around the pilot to know is that CFC participated in the pilot. We learned a lot. We're really focused on how the IRP can support organizations to really access social finance. And we think that one of the key learnings was that it needs to be an education component alongside a project specific. And so I'll touch a little bit more on this. But in essence, it's good to know that Community Foundations of Canada is working with local community foundations to partner to distribute the funds. So things like the Social Finance Fund that Wayne touched on is being designed. And we just want to make sure that as we grow the market, that organizations have the opportunity to grow and develop alongside it. So as I've mentioned, we've already completed a pilot of the Investment Readiness Program, and we're in the second iteration. So an overview of what we saw in the Investment Readiness Program. For CFC, we funded about 512 projects through the program. Half of them were primarily social in purpose, and about a quarter each were environmental or cultural. And so again, that definition of a social purpose organization, they need to have a social, environmental, or cultural purpose. So as the IRP helps social purpose organizations take concrete steps towards seeking and accepting investment, we would like you to think about kind of where you are on this trajectory and what would bring you closer to being ready for investment. And that's the key of the program. It really has to be geared towards one day accessing investment opportunities. So organizations can apply to receive non-repayable capital or funding to launch, design, measure, and scale their social purpose organizations. So one challenge from the IRP really was around the concept of what is social finance. And I think that Wayne did a great job of explaining social finance. But the reality is that without education and kind of us all generalizing these terms, sometimes just the word social finance is confusing. And so we're trying to do everything we can to kind of break down those barriers. So social finance really is an approach to mobilizing capital that delivers a positive social, cultural, or environmental return alongside an economic return. And really what makes a difference to a regular investment is that not only is it sustainable, but the heart of the work really is that positive social, cultural, or environmental return. It provides opportunities for charities, not-for-profits, co-ops, alongside those social enterprises to access new sources of funds. Another challenge that we identified is the concept of social enterprise itself. And so social enterprise has a different explanation depending on where you are in the country. We've actually had we had a webinar yesterday at CFC to talk about the concept of social entrepreneurship, and it really is a scale itself. And so for the IRP, one thing that we've done is try to get really clear as to what a social enterprise business, so that for-profit model, is for the IRP versus kind of in regular language. And so this is a representation in a fairly easy way, if you read your screen, to just kind of assess what it is, the difference in between the for-profit models. Essentially, the eligible business uses the majority of profits to achieve positive social, cultural, or environmental objectives and expend the impact of its mission. And it goes above and beyond to solve a key social, environmental, or cultural issue. The ineligible business seeks to ensure that it operates in an economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable manner. For example, a do no harm approach. Maybe it has a corporate social responsibility portfolio, or it's some level of a B Corp, but that in and of itself doesn't make it eligible. So the key opportunity of the IRP is a chance to think about your organization and how you can move towards being ready for investment with a funding opportunity that really doesn't, it needs to align with your core purpose, but really does support a new idea and a specific project. So in the IRP pilot, some primary areas we saw where folks put those dollars and access services were around things like business plans and strategic planning. So for example, River Select Fisheries Cooperative, they refreshed their business plan to diversify operations beyond First Nations river caught salmon to seafood that was coast-wide available. So they expanded their client base, they grew their business, and then they were going to be ready to kind of set up their plan for taking on investment to grow. Marketing services, which really can be anything from brand to your audience creation. Lots of folks accessed financial and tax services. There's also some legal and risk services, just especially when you're entering new markets or when you're kind of thinking about taking on investment and you're really close, you need to make sure that all of your T's have lines and your I's have dots. That's the expression, right? And then there's also market research and analysis. So you should be thinking about what do you need to focus on to really be ready to take on that investment. So some other examples of IRP stories, and just so everyone knows, CFC does have a few of these online, and I'll reference those a little bit later. But 3 stories I wanted to share with you all today to give you a bit more of concept of what this actually is and what it funded in the pilot. So Acoma Holdings, whose mission is providing stewardship of its assets to create economic and social opportunities for the African Nova Scotian community and general society, used the funding to create business plans, financial modeling, viability studies, environmental assessments to bolster the board's pitch to potential backers for the redevelopment of a larger mixed-use lot of affordable housing, cultural, and commercial space. Clan Mothers applied for the funding to develop their brand, complete market research, and create financial modeling while launching their social enterprise, the Corporate TRC Audit and Consulting. In Powell River, BC, K-Lumen is a social enterprise and manufacturing facility providing inclusive employment for diverse abilities. Its product is a fire starter made from 99% recycled materials, and K-Lumen used the funding to create a business plan to show potential investors. So as I mentioned, these are just a few of the ways IRP funding was used, and more stories can be read on the CFC website. Final story that I think is quite interesting is Iron and Earth. And so they're providing a climate solution by empowering fossil fuel industry workers to build sustainable energy economies. So the nonprofit was created in response to the 2015 oil crash in Alberta primarily. So workers were chatting around their lunch table. They noticed a lot of people were, not coming in anymore. They had lost their positions. And they realized that their skills and experience were highly transferable into the renewable energy economy. So they decided to form an organization to build that future economy. The organization launched a social enterprise, a business that uses the sale of services to advance a social mission. And for Iron and Earth, that meant offering short-term in-person training in renewable energy for the fossil fuel sector and Indigenous workers. So any profits generated by the training company would go into the nonprofit arm of Iron and Earth. So the IRP helped Iron and Earth to undertake expert-informed viability studies, market analysis, and business plans to demonstrate that they're ready to take on that investment they require to grow. This was a slide to talk about all the different readiness support partner funding available. CFC is only one of several. Wayne has already touched on this, so I'm not going to speak too much about it. The one piece that I would mention is that CFC is supporting the Foundation for Black Communities to deliver a Black-led and Black-serving IRP stream. And the application form is open, same as ours, and it's actually the same application form. So when you log into ours, you're going to have the opportunity to apply to either FFBC or CFC or to both. And that's just a little piece of collaboration that we're doing with them. So again, this has slightly been touched on, but I think it's important and we should discuss it. The eligibility of the IRP is for social purpose organizations. So these are charities or other qualified donees, such as Indigenous governments, nonprofits, social enterprise businesses, or cooperatives that are advancing a social, cultural, or environmental mission. And again, this is CFC's eligibility. Other readiness support partners might be slightly different, but we all kind of have that theme around supporting the advancement of social, cultural, and environmental missions. So your organization must have or plan to have a mechanism that generates revenue from the sale of goods and services. So revenue from donation doesn't count in this context. It needs to be revenue generation through the sale of goods or services. You have a plan or intention to seek investment, whether loans or equity, community bonds or other. And your social purpose organization has a CRA charitable number or it has a CRA business registration number. So you really should be able to demonstrate that you have a plan, capacity, and expertise to carry out the proposed project that you're applying for. How am I doing for time, Susanna? I can't see the chat.
Okay, yes, you are about up.
Okay. I'm going to speak quickly on community foundations. So it's really important to know that community foundations are the ones that are actually delivering this program. And so there are 17 regional partners, as we're calling them, where community foundations can support different applicants in the process. I'm going to skip through these. As I mentioned, you apply online, and all the info is there. Last thing I wanted to say was resources. So the IRP website, which is actually hosted by SADNet, is a wonderful resource. It has tons of tools. Take a look at that. Also, the CFC website, we have tons of resources available there. And lastly, just saying that if you have any questions, you can reach out to the team at CFC and we'll be happy to help. So thanks so much, everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Michelle, for taking us through that process. I know it's also mentioned here in the chat. Thanks so much, Startup Canada, for also putting the link there, that CFC currently is open for applications with their deadline coming up on November 22nd. If you have questions for Michelle, please do add them in the chat and we'll be able to answer some of them during the Q&A at the end. Our last speaker for today is Zara Qureshi, who comes with 12 years of experience as a chartered professional accountant under her belt. She's on a mission to reduce the stress on entrepreneurs and equip them with strategic clarity for achieving financial sustainability, powerful growth, and positive social change. A serial entrepreneur herself, Zara secured funding through the Investment Readiness Program's pilot in 2019 to 2021. And I would love to welcome Zara to take the floor. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm just going to share my screen before I get started. Can you see the presentation?
Absolutely. Looks great.
Great. Awesome. So adding on to all the wonderful information that's already been shared, what I'm going to be talking about is more my personal journey on submitting the application for the program and then actually working on the project. So over the time that the Investment Readiness Program has run, I've crossed paths with it a few times. It was great support for Social Venture Circuit itself. I filled in the application for that. I managed the project as the executive director of the nonprofit. So that was a full experience. I've also helped other organizations to write grants and also been a service provider and an expert just to help social enterprises to actually achieve the goals that they set out to on the path to investment readiness. So worn a couple of different hats in terms of going through this process, which I've compiled for you here today. So first, talking about my experience for applying for the Investment Readiness Program. Now, I'm not going to go through the formal eligibility criteria or the formal application process, but really just sharing insight in terms of what can help you put together a strong application and stand out when highlighting your social enterprise. So the path on getting investment ready, there's really 4 components to it that they're looking to see how you've made progress on these components, how you've prioritized them so far in your organization, and with access to the funding, where you're looking to take that through the project. So the top part is really when you look at a social enterprise, there's 2 components to it. One is the mission. So you want to have that social, cultural, or environmental objective, and that it's really embedded into your organization and how you operate and make decisions, that it shows up very strong there. And then the other side of that is enterprise. So that's your business component. What are the products or services that you're selling to generate revenue that's being used to fund your social enterprise? And if you study social enterprises, there's really many different ways of lining that up. And it really depends on the impact you're trying to create. In some cases, it's a little bit difficult to line up the mission and the enterprise. In some cases, they overlap very well. But it's really up to you to find that sustainable rhythm for your organization to keep it running and to figure out what that balance looks like. And at the bottom, it's really about having the right infrastructure in your organization that a social enterprise should. And that shows that you're capable of securing and then managing investment. So for a social enterprise, the two parts of that, one are impact management. And that's really about how you prioritize your mission, how you set goals for it, how you stay close to the mission and measure the impact that you're having on the community or the environment that you want to serve. And the other part of that is to support the enterprise side of things, and your growth objectives is financial management. And those are things that really show your ability to manage money, to use it effectively, to grow the organization, to have the use of funding be aligned with the mission and the enterprise components of the organization. So under financial management, the application does ask for your financial history. So make sure putting together your financial statements, how you budget, how your profits are being used, be very clear in articulating those things. And with impact management, I have some more information in terms of how you want to highlight that strategy and your priorities. I did pick some specific questions from the application and how you can approach them and what makes a strong answer or strong strategy for a social enterprise. One big one that I wanted to highlight was nothing about us without us. And that's really about how a social enterprise is giving people positions and giving them the opportunity to voice their concerns or expertise in every part of the organization. And there's three parts of it that I highlighted. One is that as a founder, are you the right person to actually be working on that social enterprise, the mission that it has? And why is that? So you want to highlight your capabilities, your previous experiences, and those of everyone on your team, and to highlight that you are really the right people. And then having decision makers. So who are other community leaders, people that are actually impacted by the work you're doing? How are they involved in your organization? How do you include them in decisions? Are they on your board? What does the diversity of your board of directors looks like? Who's acting as advisors? Who's senior management? So you want to see the right people in the different roles. And that's something that is asked about and submitted as a document, as a part of the application. I outlined that we really have the right people involved in driving the organization forward. And the third part of that is beneficiaries. The people that benefit from your social enterprise mission. How do you stay close to them and their needs to make sure you're serving them and that your impact is actually contributing to their lifestyles positively? So these are three things that I would really highlight to make sure that you've got the right people in the right places for your organization and the growth goals that you have. The next part that I want to highlight is there's a question about how will profits be used. So when talking about profits, that's your surplus that's left after payroll, administration, evaluation, all those expenses that you have ongoing for an organization to run it. And one of the eligibility criteria for the application is that 50% or more is actually being reinvested back into the mission. If you're a nonprofit or charity, that's going to be 100% because you don't have to worry about shareholder return or anything like that. And on the journey to becoming investment ready as a growing organization, you really want to be looking at reinvesting your surplus into building capacity to amplify impact. Maybe you have a bigger community of beneficiaries to serve than what you're currently doing, or they need more programs and support to be able to fully address the challenges that they're experiencing. You want to look at more outreach and evaluation, to stay close to the community that you're serving. And profits can also be reinvested into things similar to what you're doing in this project to help yourself grow and become closer to being investment ready. So these are things that you want to highlight in terms of future projects and initiatives beyond the timeline of the Investment Readiness Program. And the next part, very important, how will your impact be measured? The application does give you a choice of choosing up to 3 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And it's important to kind of mix and match them really smartly to have them aligned to really tell your story on what you're working on. And I find that often it takes multiple goals to align to your unique story. And then you want to apply a lens of things like diversity and inclusion, what are the specific demographics of the community that you're serving. And that's an extra layer above choosing the right SDG to fit your mission. The other thing to keep in mind for impact measurement is to highlight what we call both outputs and outcomes and the relationship between them. So output means what is the work you're doing? How much of it are you doing, either in terms of time, the number of people that are able to access the programming, number of employees, things like that indicate output and the capacity you're operating at. So you want to measure that. And then you want to measure outcomes. Are the beneficiaries or the environment actually better off based on the programming that you're offering, and how are you tracking that? And it's very important to observe the relationship between outputs and outcomes to highlight that the work that you're doing is actually creating a positive impact. Getting a little bit more specific about describing your impact measurement priorities, you want to have a combination of qualitative and quantitative measures. And your strategies there can range from just, general ratings on a scale of 1 to 10, more detailed feedback surveys, observing people as they participate in your programming, collecting information and analyzing that if you have environmental goals. And it can get very, very deep into things even like focus groups and interviews that require more time, but can be very beneficial, especially as you're growing your programming and your impact. So those are some things. I hope that's helpful to answer a few of these key questions that are a part of the application. In terms of your general social enterprise concept, this is the framework that I use to highlight what's the work being done in the organization. Sorry, I realized my slides weren't changing. Apologies. So for the social enterprise concept, you want to start with your vision, and this is both for the sales and revenue component plus the environmental, social, or cultural mission of the organization. You want to make sure that you have a connection between your overall vision for the organization, you're setting very specific goals and targets, and connecting them to activities that you say you're going to be working on, things that are happening in the organization, and then what's the impact of those. So things to highlight here are what is strategic planning you're doing to make sure you're growing, what are the activities that are taking place to serve the mission, and what are activities that are taking place to bring revenue into the organization for cash flow and profits. So this framework I find is very, very helpful in illustrating that. Other documents to add for your application, a project work plan, and you can attach that in terms of what needs to be done, the steps that you're going to be working on, and the deliverables that will actually be created. So what are the tangible initiatives, planning documents, things like that will actually be created from the work that you're doing? And then how will you use them beyond the time of the project? One other thing I found really helpful is to speak to the people beforehand that you're actually going to be working with once you secure the project funding. Highlight their expertise, get recommendations from them on how you can actually build a successful project. And they can also provide you with cost estimates. So for example, I provided an applicant with a budget on how I can work with them and details of what are the things that I could help them accomplish to get them get their project done on the path to investment readiness. And that's something that helps to strengthen your application, having their feedback and their expertise, get the right language into your application. So those are a few tips in terms of improving your application. I hope that's helpful. I also wanted to highlight a couple of things about the experience of actually working on the project. So in the experience of working with the expert service providers, when the project started, I gathered everything that I had already that was relevant for them, made an information package and provided to them. So they were not starting from scratch. And the timeline is fairly tight. There's a lot to accomplish when you're implementing a project. So it really helped to hit the ground running. We had regular meetings to share progress and challenges. And we did compile specific reports and plans on what was being done, what did we hope to achieve, so that we could go back and reflect on that. And those were things that I continued to use well beyond the scope of the project. The project there were small pivots and changes in terms of timelines of what needed to be done first, and that's okay. There's a lot of support for that, and you can communicate it pretty early to community foundations and to your own team as well, to still get things done. Specifically around reporting back, for the Investment Readiness Program, I found that the process for reporting back was actually the process for reporting back was actually very, very simple. It was easy to use. There was the project side of things. So are you sticking to your work plan? How is that progressing? Are the deliverables that were expected being created? And then the other part of it, of course, is to report your expenses. So you want to keep an eye on your budget. If it needs to be amended, communicate that very early, and you can get changes approved, because the point of the program really is to help you succeed. So they're very supportive in that. In the background, make sure you have an audit ready version of all your invoices, payments that you've issued, very, very neat records to be able to provide those in case you're ever audited or that detailed review needs to be done on what happened in your project. How did the project actually help me? It helped the team to carve out time to prioritize long-term growth when we were scrambling for day-to-day operations as a very small organization. We were better able to balance priorities between mission and enterprise. For us, the mission part was quite sorted, and it was really the impact side that we needed to connect back to it. So that was a priority of our project. And it gave me a lot of resources and ideas that we continue to use well beyond the project. And it's given a lot of clarity for the organization as a whole. And we did move along the spectrum to being more investment ready, to being a more sustainable organization, thanks to the program. That's it for my presentation. I am going to share, there's a couple of events coming up through Startup Canada and Startup Social Enterprise that I encourage you to check out. I will share the links in the chat for anyone who's interested. And I apologize for my slides not changing along with what I was seeing.
No worries at all. Thank you so much, Sarah. That was really helpful to get a perspective of someone who's been through the process before, especially in those lessons learned and advice for everybody here. We are going to open up the floor for Q&A, and I'm going to take the first few questions that have been unanswered so far. I see, Wayne, you've been really on top of answering that Q&A when they've come in, so thank you so much for that. The first question I have here is from Anne. And Anne's question is, what is the timeline between application, approval, and disbursement of funds? I think that can be directed perhaps to Michelle as someone who's part of our readiness support partner. However, I will say that each readiness support partner is different. So depending on which type of funding you're looking for through the IRP, I would recommend looking at their specific eligibility guidelines and getting in touch with them. But for CFC specific, I will go to Michelle.
Yeah, so in between the stage of making your application and getting a result letter takes some time, to be absolutely honest. CFC works with community foundations who are working with community groups. So you can expect it to take months, not weeks. And it says in our guidelines, essentially, that you can't start your projects until February 15th. And so the expectation is that it would be in the month of February when you would get results. But again, not a specific day at this time because our world changes so much.
That's fair. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to go next to Sandrine's question. So nonprofits with no charity number will not be eligible. Is that correct? Perhaps is that a question for Michelle or for Wayne, perhaps?
Well, from the government's perspective, nonprofits just need a business number. So they just have to be a registered entity. But then again, I might defer to each readiness support partner, like they may have specific requirements. So if you are not a registered charity, that is okay. And then it just depends on which readiness support partner you are actually applying to.
Okay, thank you. That perhaps also kind of answers Alexia's question about a nonprofit organization just getting started doesn't have a CRA charitable number or a qualified donor yet. Thank you. I'll go down to the next one here from Aisha. And specifically looking to Zara. The IRP application requires an SPO to use at least 50% of the profits to advance the social cause of business. Could you please elaborate on that? Thanks.
Sure. So for nonprofits, it's a little bit similar because you don't, it's a little bit simpler because you don't have shareholders. So your profits or surplus does get reinvested back into the organization. It's kind of a part of being a part of the mandate of being a nonprofit as well, that you don't make excessive profits. For a social enterprise, that 50% would be, if you're looking at your annual bottom line, whatever's going back into the business, that means you're not paying out your equity holders, you're not paying out dividends or anything to shareholders, and that money is staying within your organization to fund the next year of expenses, maybe growth and programming. I hope that helps.
Okay, great. Thank you. It seems to be the specific question for Zara from Alexis, looking to see if they have proposals from consultants who will play an important role in the project, whether those should be submitted as attachments. I believe that they're only supposed to be permitted on if we were only permitted one attachment. Proposals could be consolidated perhaps into one document.
So what I did was I made one project package, and that had everything has to be pretty concise. So at the beginning, I had a summary of what the project was going to be, what our team hoped to accomplish with it. And a part of that package, one of the pages was an outline submitted by a consultant that I was working with. They outlined their spend, the steps they would take, and why they were the right people to do it. So keep it very short, like 1 or 2 page, and you can just put that at the end of that one attachment that explains your project proposal.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for that advice. That's great. Unfortunately, I think that's all the time that we have for today. The other questions that we did not get to, we'll be sure to be able to ask our participants, ask our panelists today, and get back as soon as we can to those who asked. Thank you so much for all of our presenters for taking the time out of their days and providing their expertise. And thank you everyone for attending this session. Big shout out to Startup Canada for doing such a stellar job putting together this incredible webinar. And I'm going to launch a poll for us right now. Just a quick feedback poll. We'd just love if you were able to complete this before you leave. And just wanted to mention that we share Investment Readiness Program highlights, news, updates with our community members. So you can sign up and receive these regular updates. Details will be available in the chat. Thanks so much, Startup Canada. And also, while I'm launching this poll, just wanted to mention for all of you in Toronto, you can check out the Global Entrepreneurship Week Navigating Social Innovation event on November 16th, happening at the Center for Social Innovation. So it's a free in-person event as well. Yes, thank you all so much for being able to be here today and taking the time to join us. We really appreciate everyone spending their time with us today. That's great. And also, I learned so much. You're such a wealth of knowledge, all three of you, and I really appreciate the different perspectives that you brought today. Excellent. I'm seeing such great comments in the chat, and that's wonderful.
Thanks, everyone.
Fantastic.
Thanks, everyone. Have a
Thank
good rest of your
you.
Tuesday.
Enjoy the rest of your week ahead. Take care, everybody.